anything, and that goes back to a European concept called tabula rasa. You know what tabula rasa is? I covered it last year. Blank slate. The European educational system assumes that you come into school empty. Blank slate, tabula rasa. The job of the teacher, therefore, is to fill you up from outside. You don't have anything inside, so you fill up from outside. So that then leads to the process where you sit in rows and the teacher lectures to you, and you're not able to lecture back. In the African system, it's just the opposite. It's assumed that you come with everything you already need inside. The job of the teacher, therefore, is not to fill you up, but to bring out what you already have. A whole different process.
Fill us up, but what are we full of?
Yeah, well, we know we're full of. I've been fascinated by this book. I've got it. You can see it's falling apart now. I've underlined it so much and opened it so much. Books like John G. Jackson's book. There's another book like Basil Davidson also, The Lost Cities of Africa. Next time I'm going to talk about Kush and the beginnings of the decline of Egypt. Someone asked earlier, what happened to them? Well, what happened to Egypt is that one after another, people tried to conquer them. You mentioned Taharqa a minute ago, and the folks from Kush. I've been searching for an article that the Washington Post put out a number of years ago about ancient Kush and the other name of Kush. I gave it last week. What's below Egypt? Nubia. Actually, Nubia. Every time that Egypt went into decline, the Nubians would come into Egypt and reestablish stability, and then they go back home. The southern Africans would come and reestablish Egypt after the Asians who have come in and disrupted things, and go back home. The last takeover, they were not really able anymore to establish consistency in Egypt. Things have been disrupted too much. And then after that, the Syrians came in. And after the Syrians, one wave of folks after another, until they had finally been disrupted. And the book 2000 Seasons talks about that, by Amar. At that point, some of the folks had it up, left out of there, and moved into the western parts of Africa. And that begins the disruption of the culture. They took with them what they could, but Egypt was a stable culture because of where they were situated and the ability they had to build in stone. Other parts of Africa didn't have the kind of stone they had, so they couldn't build the same kind of societies. Then, of course, by that time, Europe was on the rise, and the Europeans were then looking for goods everywhere they could find them, and Africa was the place that they could find most of the stuff, and so they then began exploration.
But Europe's rise was as a result of their invasions of Africa and some parts of Asia.
Yes.
Had they not done that, they didn't have the wherewithal themselves, the information and knowledge to raise themselves up.
No.
But it was done on taking the information they got from these places, and then, even though they didn't get it all or they got it in a garbled form or whatever, but then using that in a negative, destructive way to come back and set upon the people they learned from.
Yeah. Christopher Columbus was not a great man in terms of any discovery. He learned his navigation skills on the west coast of Africa and came in contact with Africans who've been back and forth in the New World all the time. In this chapter 3, he talks about the fact that, if I find the passage here, Gerald Masterton's learned work, a book of beginnings, argued persuasively that civilizations first arose in the interior of the African continent, and then after passing through Egypt, was in due time diffused over the rest of the globe. We have no evidence that the ancient Egyptians ever sent any colonies to the British Isles, yet Mr. Massey shows that there was a definite Egyptian cultural influence among the ancient Britons. In the Book of Beginnings is a long list of English words still in use today that seem to be of ancient Egyptian origin. Massey's book is long and out of print, but short selection from this list of Egypto-English words has been reproduced by Lillian Etchler in Customs of Mankind, from which we cite a few examples. He cites the word abode in English comes from the word abut in Egyptian. The word attack in English, in Egyptian is spelled A-T-A-K-H. The word autumn comes from etum, the red autumn sun. Canoe comes from K-H-E-N-N-A, a boat. The word count, a title, comes from K-A-N-N-T, in Egyptian, a title. The word cow comes from K-A-U-I, which means cow in Egyptian. The word foot, F-O-O-T, comes from F-U-T, a measure in Egypt, F-U-T. Hag or witch comes from the word hek, which means magic. Mama, M-A-M-M-A in English, the mother, comes from M-A-M-A, which means to bear in Egyptian. And it goes, of course, Ray, the word Ray, the ray of the sun, comes from Ra. So that there are connections all over the world with with language that can determine where things have come from. And so while we don't have any evidence that the Egyptians were in England, certainly the influence was there because the language of English carries linguistic trademarks that come out of Egypt. There's another book that I mentioned last week by Nana Dakwa, guy from teaches out in Arkansas. He goes back and looks at the Egyptian language and ties those words into languages from West Africa. Again, there's another proof that the Hebrews, look at the Hebrew words, shows that the Hebrews were of African origin. So all these things are beginning to come forward now by people who study in these areas. They didn't come forward before because the people who studied them were not looking for that. They were trying to study for different reasons, and they were ignorant in their brilliance because they did not know enough about the content they were studying to be able to interpret what they were seeing correctly. It's like the guy looking at find the book in the tomb and calling it Das Totenbuch, the book of the dead, before he could translate it. When he translates it, it's the book of coming forth by night and by day. It's a whole different perspective. That's the crux of what I wanted to do today. I want to raise up this book for you, Introduction to African Civilizations by John G. Jackson.